like you're wearing my clothes.
We're ready to start, Larry? Okay. Hi, good morning. Today's August 1st, 2019. We're beginning our work session bright and early. It's 8:35. If we could start by standing for the pledge. Jim, would you like to lead us?
Sure. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Just a few announcements. It's Tim's birthday today, so happy birthday, Tim.
Happy birthday. Thank you. The big 5'9"?
Another year younger.
Big 5'9".
Are you, yeah, wow.
Again.
That's true.
And Jim, did you just, do you have the concert this weekend? Did you just want to mention
Yes,
that?
tomorrow night, actually, at the Polish Town Pavilion is the Jim Lowe Memorial Friday Night Concert, and it's southbound, and it's gonna be a great concert, a great night, so bring a lawn chair, a snack, a big bag, and dancing shoes.
And what time does that start at?
Starts at 7.
7 o'clock?
Better get there early, though, because there's gonna be a lot of people.
That's
All
a
right.
great band.
Yeah. And then we have a live on 25, tonight, this Thursday, it's today.
And Art in the Park.
And Art in the
Right.
Park, so that starts at 5:30 for live on 25, and then Art in the Park is, the exhibit is there, and as it gets dark, everything will be lit up. So it's a great event to come down and enjoy our downtown. So this morning, our first discussion item, excuse me, is Calverton Aviation and Technology, the EPCAL development presentation. So I ask those involved to come on up, and we can introduce you once you come up. And Frank and,
Let me move over. I don't think I need this, right?
Yes.
I'll sit here. Wait a sec. Yeah, you sit here. Sure. Laura, you sit over here. And Dan, sit over here.
Next to me, Frank, I'll,
So you sit-
We have more chairs if we need them.
sit here.
Yes?
So you sit up.
Okay.
Thank you. I think we got it.
if you need more, we have more chairs here, so
Four
we'll get more.
bodies, 5
I
chairs.
just
We're
tried to
good.
figure out best way
Okay.
for us to talk to you.
Okay,
Okay.
good morning. How are you?
Good morning.
Drove in this morning? Drove in this morning?
Of course. Is my hair dry yet?
I know that feeling.
Yes. Great.
All right, good morning, everybody. So we will start introducing around. If we'd like to start from this end of the table, just to introduce yourself.
Laura Schwanoff. I work for GEI. I'm a landscape architect and senior ecological practice leader.
Okay.
Amy Herbold, Director of Development for Triple Play.
Chris Kent from Farrell Fritz for the applicant.
Philip Butler, also with Farrell Fritz. Damon Oscarson with GEI Consultants, I'm a senior ecologist.
David Laser, I'm from Laser Taker, special counsel to the CDA.
Frank Eisler, Smith Finkelstein, counsel to the board.
Okay, very good. So thank you guys for coming. We'll start, I will turn it over to you. I know that you wanted to present to us, and then once that's done, we can, ask some questions and stuff. So we can start with your update of what's been going on.
Yeah, I would like to just start initially with kind of with a statement of where we are and what we're thinking. First of all, I'd also like to state that we're here to present to you, give you an update of where we are, but we're not making any formal submission today. There is no site plans that we're presenting to you. We're basically presenting to you and explaining to you work product from our due diligence,
Okay.
which we are still engaged in. Although we have given you our notice to proceed, and our due diligence period under the agreement has ended, and we understand that, and we are ready to proceed to closing, we are still engaged in due diligence, because even after the closing, we're going to have to be planning and designing site plans to be submitted to the town for your review. But that'll be all post-closing. After we acquire the land, we'll be coming in with formal applications of how we choose to develop the property.
Okay.
So Calverton Aviation and Technology, or as we refer to them as CAT, just to make it easy, hopes its appearance before the board will be received as further confirmation of its commitment to the reuse and revitalization of EPCAL, its dedication to fulfilling its obligations under the purchase agreement, and its partnership with the town of Riverhead. CAT is proud to have been designated as the qualified and eligible sponsor. We take it as a privilege to be the developer of the available property at EPCAL, and we're excited by the tremendous assets that the property has to offer. The 2 runways will be utilized as accessory to any proposed development. The existing railroad spur that provides the opportunity to receive materials and ship product by rail, and someday, hopefully, in the not-too-distant future, allow employees and visitors to access the site by the Long Island Railroad main line rather than increasing traffic congestion in the region. The existing industrial core, the businesses located there, and the existing on-site recreational facilities that we will look to enhance are tremendous assets to this development project. A proposed rail depot that will service both the existing industrial park and the new proposed development would be a tremendous asset for the site. CAT has the experience, the resources, and the industry and business connections to attract new science and advanced technology enterprises to Riverhead. We propose research and development, prototype development and manufacturing in the aerospace, aviation, transportation, energy, and technology industries with academic and educational components. This type of development will produce high-paying and stable jobs for many years. We will engage in efforts to develop an advanced clean energy microgrid in line with the governor's recent proposal to produce 70% of the statewide electricity from renewable sources by 2030. Our goal would be to design the proposed on-site advanced clean energy microgrid to meet both current baseload demand and to be an independent supplier of all power needed to serve the proposed EPCAL campus. We're looking to transform the economy of the East End, and one day, this region could be recognized as the Silicon Valley of the East. It's a big goal, but it starts with the first step. As your development partner, we believe that we can achieve such great things together. We want and need the town's support. We need you to support our efforts, and we are confident, given the opportunity and the time necessary to complete our obligations under the contract, and our plans to develop the site as proposed, that those lofty goals are within our reach. Did you want to speak about? There have been questions about our relationship as members of the CAT entity. We're all aware of them. At the qualified eligible hearing stage, the town board asked that Illuminati Preston's role in CAT and the proposed development of EPCAL be controlled, be limited. CAT honored the town's request by reducing Illuminati and Preston's role and membership interest and financial responsibility and control of CAT by making Illuminati a silent, non-voting member of CAT with a defined role to attract other entrepreneurs and aviation technology type businesses to the project. In discussions with Daniel Preston, he remains a critical member of CAT, and he's committed to serve Illuminati's defined role in the project. Illuminati Preston will still be an intellectual resource and entrepreneurial presence at the future EPCAL campus, but he will only be one of the many like-kind technology companies that will locate at EPCAL. Recent negative publicity and professional and personal attacks, both against Illuminati and Daniel Preston, have made him decide to pursue his opportunities upstate for now. He thought it best to remove himself from the situation. We will not presume to speak for Daniel Preston or Illuminati regarding his ventures upstate. He's been fairly public about those himself, and we don't need to get into that. But he has remained committed to CAT as a member and as a driving force behind a small portion of the EPCAL development. His limited role does not affect CAT's ability to meet its obligations under the purchase agreement or to realize its goals and objectives for the redevelopment of EPCAL. Nor does it affect Luminati's or Daniel Preston's commitment to the project or its future presence at the EPCAL campus. CAT's requirements and obligations at the present time, what we're doing right now, demands the expertise of 555. Planning, design, and development are what 555 does. Once we have control of the property and can more aggressively pursue tenancy by the desired companies, CAT will draw more upon Daniel's expertise. The first thing that we took a look at when it came to me, I started working for 555 and CAT and the application in February 10th, I think was the date I started working for them. They retained Farrell Fritz. When I first looked at the daunting task of how to redevelop this site, the very first thing I said is we need to establish an environmental baseline for the property. I know the town had made an attempt, never completed, a 50-lot subdivision of the property with a habitat and protection plan that it had negotiated with the DEC. When we looked at it, we wanted to first develop a habitat protection plan of our own that would be more in line with how we would propose to develop the property. To make sure that the 600 acres or 10 million square feet that had been negotiated between CAT and the town was possible, based on the limitations and the restrictions, both from identified habitat for endangered species and grasslands and woodlands on the site. CAT and its environmental consultant, GEI, have spent several months developing a proposed habitat protection plan. The plan will meet the thresholds established in the FGEIS and identify other environmentally valuable areas for preservation. I'd like to hand up to you a plan that we prepared, and it's strictly, again, this is not our formal submission. This is a due diligence plan that we prepared to meet with the DEC and to ultimately come here today. That was our intent with this plan. What this plan provides, and I'll walk you through it. I'd like you not to start yet because I want to walk you through the plan because it's very important. It's very important how we prepared this. We started with existing conditions. Is that one? I have one here. We started with what the existing conditions were for the site. So if you open it up, page 1.
Do you have an extra copy?
I've got it.
Can we do that at the end? Can we wait a minute? I'd rather focus on what we're doing and walk you through it. This is the existing conditions of the site. This was prepared by GEI from both existing records, from field investigation and aerial photos that identify what we believe to be the critical resource areas of this site. Starting at the far left of the paper and the far west of the property, that's the industrial core. That's a 293, that's the Pine Barrens core.
Yes, it's there.
Excuse me.
Gonna say.
Pine Barrens core. We'll get to the industrial core in a minute. That's the Pine Barrens core. It's a 293 acre parcel. It's restricted. Development is completely restricted by New York state law and also restricted by the overlay zoning that was adopted by the town of Riverhead many years ago. If you look at the upper left of the document, we have a table there. And what that table provides you is the total acreage of the property currently owned by the town. It tells you the acres that will be retained by the town after the transfer. It tells you the acreage that will be conveyed to CAT. And then it gives you what's called the habitat total. Now, the difference between the left column and the right column is the left column is what was identified in the FGEIS. The far right column was what was determined to be present at the site based on aerial photos, records, and field investigation conducted by GEI. And we have Laura and Damon, who both did the work to both identify the areas and to produce this table for us. So that, and also the colored map. If we take a look at the colored, and that's why there's a difference in the numbers, okay? This was what's identified in the FGEIS. This is what is, the far right is the habitat total identified by GEI on their field investigations. If you look at the map itself, you'll see that the property is made up of grasslands, some which have been identified as prime grasslands, high quality, which is the darker of the yellow, and then the lower quality grasslands that have been somewhat invaded by shrubs and red cedars.
And that's the lighter yellow?
Yes.
And this is information that you got from your meeting with the DEC as to which was prime and subprime?
I will let Laura speak to that. Laura's the one who did the category.
I'm just curious as to how this legend came about and whether it was a result of discussions with the DEC.
It was a result of field investigations by us. The reason it's considered subprime is it decreases the viability for some of the endangered species.
Okay, so it wasn't as a result of the DEC meeting. That's all I wanted to know.
We discussed it preliminarily with DEC, and they were on board with our definition.
Okay.
So the purple area, which is kind of an interesting area, that woodland is plantation, meaning it was not native. It was planted sometime after first cut. So Laura, maybe you can go into what distinguishes that area.
Chris, if I can just stop you for a second. Would you object to making copies of this for the press? Because they really like to follow along with us as you're explaining things.
Okay.
And I see them
Yeah,
both shaking their heads.
Take mine and I'll share
They're-
with Jody.
They're frustrated. It is. Yes, it is.
We're gonna turn it over to you. I wasn't saying.
Yeah, they just,
No, I don't think there's any,
It's
I
okay.
don't think there's anything in the open
It's
meetings law
happening
about
now.
during the discussion.
Okay. It's happening now, so you're gonna
seems
get a
right.
copy of
I
it.
know, I have no problem with it. I just didn't want to start distracting with
We
giving
can go on
Hannah.
because we have the.
Yes.
If you want to
the-
wait, I'll wait. We'll
Okay.
let them go along with us.
But I thought you had a copy.
Yeah, I thought John just took a copy.
No.
But, okay.
No, yeah, you
John
have
just-
an
Oh, John
extra
did take
copy,
one? Oh, yeah,
right?
I thought
At
he
least
took
if we
it
can
before.
get one out, that would be great, and
Yeah,
then we
no,
can go on.
John took one, he's gonna copy it. We'll just wait.
Yeah.
We're not here to be adversarial. We want to be your partners.
Okay, yeah, no.
Neither are we.
They're
And
making,
I'd like it to
John's
be
making a
that-
copy,
so
Yeah, I
so.
have no problem making the copies. I was trying to present to you guys so we could move this along and
Understood.
get you to where.
I don't think that there's gonna be any questions from the audience. I think that they
Oh,
just
I'm
wanna
okay.
follow
I
along.
can field any question that anybody
Okay.
wants to ask.
We'll wait till the copies come out.
Yeah, we'll wait.
I wanna hear more about
I know.
More about what? Purple. Oh, well, we could talk about that. Go ahead, Laura.
No, wait.
Well, you don't need the map,
Yes.
so you can discuss
need the
what
map,
it means.
Okay, the purple strip that's there, it's native pitch pine conifers, okay? But it was planted as a plantation. It's different than your pitch pine oak habitat, just that it is a plantation. It is still considered high-quality woods. It's not considered degraded. On other portions of the property, there are some less desirable stands of evergreens, which are planted, but with non-native species. So we'll go into that when we need to.
And that's the light green to the east. If you look to the east of the 10,000-foot runway, Laura, could you explain the subprime quality woods that were introduced species to the site?
So basically, those light green areas consist primarily of white pine and Norway spruce trees that were planted. Those are classically horticultural species that are put in for a shade type of, or a shade buffer. They're not natives, so they support a different set of wildlife than the native pitch pine and oak would be.
Yeah, it's interesting how they planted all those trees there, isn't it? I've
Yeah.
walked the property, so it's,
If you go out, you see they're all in a row.
Yeah.
And there's that very interesting area to the far east that's,
yeah,
trees all around in the center.
yeah, a
There's
circle,
square.
yeah.
So there's an area that's completely cleared.
Yeah, it's really very interesting. And I think that somebody that we had walked on Earth Day last year had an explanation as to how those trees were planted, so, or why they were planted, someone from Grumman, so.
It was
it's
more like of a
interesting.
buffer for
Yeah,
certain things that
yeah.
were going on inside the area. that
Yeah.
was.
So are there protected species in there?
Not necessarily in there. We can get into the dialogue, but the most important viable habitat for protected species is within the grassland, and you'll see the blue areas on the diagram. So those represent ponds and wetlands where endangered tiger salamander habitat, you know, that's viable habitat for tiger salamanders.
Okay? So we can go to the next,
John, I think you might need to say something.
Yeah,
about
we're
it.
making more.
we can go to the next sheet.
So, there's other copies being made, so if anybody else wants a copy, it'll just be another minute or two.
Nice, here we go.
Again, and I want to reiterate, this is a preliminary draft. This was really prepared for our discussion, but we were sharing it with you. Because, you know, I know there's concern and questions about what we've been doing, and this is taking a lot of time. Just the field investigations on this site is over 2 months' worth of time. Just remember
It's
the
a large
size.
site.
Remember how big this property is.
Yeah, well, I know
This
how
is-
long it took us when we were developing the subdivision map, and it's changed a lot since then.
Right. And this is not the ESA. The environmental site assessment is a whole different report that we've also been doing, a phase 1 and phase 2, which is to identify the environmental conditions on the site, and I'll actually discuss that later. But that's a whole nother environmental study. And this is all part of our due diligence. And again, although it's ended under the contract, it continues for us, because we have to do site plan application.
Yeah, you want to determine the most viable areas to develop.
Correct, and we're gonna have to submit EAFs when we come into the town, environmental assessment forms, which are gonna be based upon the site assessment.
So I'm just looking at the numbers here. So your habitat total here is, the total grasslands is 720, and you're identified those as the protected area? Is
No,
that
no, no,
correct,
this,
or no?
this, this is existing conditions.
Okay,
We're gonna go to the next page, 'cause
Okay.
that's a critical, the next page is critical. Okay, so this is the site as proposed under the 50-lot subdivision prepared by the town, upon which the FGEIS was based. It identifies all the lots that were to be created by the 50-lot subdivision for development by the town, for sale and development. It also identifies those are the numbers. The letters identify the areas that were to be set aside by the town for preservation under the proposed habitat protection plan that was being discussed with the DEC in connection with the 50-lot subdivision. I'll let you kind of take that in, because this is an important matter. This is really what we're working as your baseline, because this is the basis for the finding statement and for the establishment of habitat areas. This became the base of your FGEIS. To walk you through the site, again, A, lot 48, identified as A, is the Pine Barrens core. Section B, just to the east of the Pine Barrens core, is an area that's impacted by a wetland. That's also area B, just to give you a little aside, that area is what is identified as Lot 8 on the subdivision map that you're now, that has now been approved by the planning board, correct? I have to do my
You were
cheat sheet.
not proposing development in area B.
Well, we're gonna
You were
get to that. We'll get
TDR.
that. No, we're not
And
even
and
doing
it's,
that.
it's B, not B, Navy B, we're talking about.
Okay, no, I'm talking about B right here.
I know you have Navy B here, I just
No,
wanted.
no, no,
No,
I
that's
know.
B.
B
No,
all the way to
I
the
know, but
west.
everybody else is looking at it too.
The
so
reason
just-
it's confusing is because the Navy identified their parcels. When they transferred the deed to the town back in the late nineties, they retained certain parcels, I believe it was Navy A, B, C, D,
Mhm.
and they were gonna remediate those,
Mhm.
and then turn them over to the town as they were remediated. So Area B that was identified by the town for preservation is there in the, just east of the Pine Barrens core. Area C is up on the, it borders the industrial core property, the western boundary of the industrial core. That lot, which was set aside by the town for preservation, it's heavily impacted by a wetland habitat. Area D on this map is the Navy B parcel, which was identified by the town as part of its, on its habitat protection plan for preservation. Area E, which is the very little sliver in the southeast corner, was identified by the town for preservation. Area F, which is a woodland section, but not a prime woodlands, it's a mix of prime and replanted. So if you go back to the prior sheet, you'll see that that area is a kind of a mixed area of high quality and subprime quality woodlands. Area G, which is up here, which at one time was a different zone under zoning, before you did the PDD, that was an office zone, but it's heavily impacted by a wetland, and it was set aside on the 50-lot subdivision as a preservation area. And Area H, which is a little tiny sliver, just north of the fire Matic property that was contaminated by Grumman. That Area H was identified by the town for preservation. If you look at this map also, it shows you that this entire area inside the 7,000-foot runway, between the 7,000-foot runway and the industrial core, was proposed for development under the 50-lot subdivision. With a small area, by the way. Also, if you look at this map, it shows areas where the town was proposing to relocate grasslands or create grasslands. So if you look at the hatched area just west of Lot 47 and south of Lot 34, that was an area to be created by the town as a grassland. There was a grassland to be created in Lot 15, in the 15 area. And there was a grassland to be created in Lot 29. There was grasslands to be created east of the 10,000-foot runway in 2 triangular pieces. There was some grasslands right along the runway setback area in parcel, what we have identified as parcel F, and another small rectangular piece, or that's actually not a rectangle, what is that called? A polygon?
Trapezoid?
Trapezoid?
I think it's a trapezoid.
I'm sorry.
Rhombus?
We're also doing a geometry lesson.
I think it's a rhombus.
A rhombus. Well, no, that's later, the happy hour, we'll do the rhombus. That is a small parcel that was going to be create a grassland by the town. And then down at the very end of the runway, there was a small area that the town was proposing to create as grasslands. So now if we go up to the box in the upper left corner of the map here, you'll see that we're listing now the FSGEIS, I guess it's a supplemental, final supplemental. In case you want to know, that's final supplemental generic environmental impact statement. That is what established the thresholds that we have to now follow, because that was in your adopted finding statement and reiterated in your recent finding statement, because you're saying your 8-lot subdivision is consistent with the 50-lot subdivision, correct?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear what you asked.
Yes.
I'm just going through the thresholds established in the FSGEIS finding statement that was reiterated recently by the planning board, that your 8-lot subdivision is gonna comply with the same standards that were established in the FSGEIS.
the finding was that it was consistent with the final supplemental GEIS.
Right. So these are the thresholds that were established by the town when you adopted your plan. So you have acres of woodland, you have acres of grassland to remain, you have grasslands proposed to be created, and you have total grasslands. In the town's plan, you were identifying, and the parcels that you're retaining, not selling to us, parcels A and parcels D will remain in town ownership. And they will remain as proposed, preserved property. And then we highlight there the acreage that we've identified of those areas. Parcels being conveyed that are identified for preservation, that are being conveyed to CAT, are parcels B, C, E, F, G, and H. We're proposing to preserve all of those, except there will be some development of F, which is a woodlands parcel of mixed value. Area F is in the Pine Barrens compatible growth area, meaning that it has restrictions on clearing. You cannot clear more than 65%.
55, I think.
65, yeah.
We'll have to clarify that, I think it might be 55, but,
Pine Barren, it's compatible growth area.
oh, it's compatible growth, but, okay. I
Okay.
still believe it's 55, but, okay, we can check on that.
It's
That's-
also limited by your own zoning. You have a Pine Barrens overlay in your zoning code. But this area is under the PDD, so it's questionable of whether that clearing limit is. We'll discuss that more when we get to site plan. But the PDD overrides the underlying zoning. Okay, so looking at that, you get an idea of the areas you were looking to develop under your 50-lot subdivision. The next page, which starts to show, again, this was designed to identify the clustered areas where we would be proposing development. That is the gray area. What we've done here, by clustering all the development along the runway, on the outsides of the runway, it allows for a tremendous amount of preservation of grasslands. All the grasslands to the north center of the property that were proposed by development by the town will be preserved. Again, this is a good comparison, if you want to, this is the way I did it.
And it also provides a taxiway in order for aircraft to get from the buildings to the runways, whereas our subdivision map failed with that.
Correct. Thereby, compromising the assets that will attract
Absolutely.
companies to the site.
I agree.
And again, the runways will be limited for use only as accessory to companies that are located on the property, as provided in your zoning. So if you look at this, I want you to look at this very clear, because there's been a lot of statements in the paper and opinion pieces written. We're not, look at the wetlands. We're nowhere near any of the wetlands.
Just, the red hatch is what?
That is created grasslands. I'm sorry, you want me to walk you through this map? Let's
No,
go-
I was just wondering, just because the legend
So,
is different,
the
it's just
reason
the
we're
hatch is
using
the
this-
grasslands?
The reason that happens is because we're removing that taxiway that's located right through contiguous grasslands. We're relocating that taxiway to the other side of the runway that will allow for the proposed development area to be connected to the runway. And the taxiway is no longer necessary inside the runway. And that would allow for greater contiguous grasslands to be created, maintained, preserved, protected.
And it gets you a little further away from the core too, which is
Gets you
good.
further away, but really, the intent was to create the habitat. And I'm gonna walk you through the table in a minute to show that we're actually increasing the amount of habitat protected under our plan as compared to the 50-lot subdivision proposed by the town.
So you're not gonna develop all 1,643 acres?
No,
Thank you for clarifying
we're actually
that.
clustering the development, if you look.
I see that.
Yes, that's the proposal. We're staying far away from the wetlands. There's no filling of wetlands, there's no relocation of wetlands, there's no damage to wetlands, there's no intrusion into wetland habitats, all the things that have been written by people in the paper and said at the meetings here before you.
And you're gonna be retaining ownership of those, so you'll be paying taxes on that property even though it's environmentally sensitive.
Well, some of the wetlands are located within the industrial core property, if you see that, most of them are. The ones to the west are, the wetland itself is on town retained property. The setbacks are located on property we're acquiring. But we're not proposing any development of Lot 8 or anything within the setbacks of any of the wetlands.
At this time, but what about at a later date?
Once this map is filed, these areas will be preserved.
I just have a question, the change in the woodland, right? So you had the 787 down to 502, and then you're including Pine Barrens core area in the woodland now. That was not previously.
No, it was always included.
Yes.
in
That was on the first sheet, if you look. That included the Pine Barrens core.
This included,
Yeah, that included Pine Barrens core. This one.
Yeah, the 293.
and this 787 include, 780 and 7 includes Pine Barrens core in it on the second sheet with our development?
Yes.
Yes,
Okay.
you see the footnote on that.
I don't see the footnote on this second table with the 50-lot subdivision.
Okay, that
No,
was
I don't.
dropped by mistake.
So that does include Pine Barrens core in this one?
It does, actually.
Here it
If you
is
look
here.
at the top, it is, the
Includes
footnote
Pine
is
Barrens
there.
core
Just
area
didn't
of
have the
293.1.
Where is it?
Are you on the right, you're not on the page?
No, I'm on our 50-lot
Oh, okay.
subdivision. On
Yeah.
our 50-lot subdivision in the woodland area, we have, the difference is just attributed to rounding. It doesn't attribute it to the Pine Barren core. And if you go to the next page, we have the 787.
No, it says the FGEIS threshold, oh, attributed to rounding, I see that.
And yours at 502 includes,
If you look up, Laura, or Damon, if you look on figure 2,
Yeah.
subdivision plan, the asterisk at the 787.3,
It's missing.
should say that it includes the Pine Barrens core.
is that correct?
It is correct.
So how come this number is so much lower, the 502 from the 787 of the woodland? What happened to it?
Because there is some woodlands being taken out in area F.
So a couple hundred acres, 250?
Well, no, because it's still the combined, remember, it's the combined total.
So how much of that is the core?
Well, of the 419, you see the 419.9?
Mm-hmm.
293 of that is core. We're not owning any core. The core is going to be remained in town ownership.
Phase 3 of the bike trail.
No, I understand that. I understand the core. I'm just curious where this 502 is coming from.
Where are the woodlands that we're not developing, is that what you're saying?
No, I'm not quite understanding the numbers. So when we have the 2,323 acres, we have 787, right, of woodland?
Mm-hmm.
And how much of that is
I'm just
core?
trying to make sure we're on the same page here, okay, this
Right, the
one.
third, your
Yeah.
development page,
Yeah.
right? So we have woodlands remaining, in the property is 787,
Correct.
right?
Yes.
And in our proposal, right, with the 50-lot subdivision, our remaining was 787 for woodlands, correct? Am I not reading this correctly? And then when I go to your proposal, for your proposal, I'm now having only 502 woodlands left, correct?
On the cat parcels.
On the
That's what
cat.
you're conveying to cat. The 787 is the total. That's the threshold.
But so on this 787 here is based on the 2,000 acres?
What you really should be looking on this table is the woodlands that you're conveying to cat, and that's this number.
306.
502.
306, right? And you're saying we're conveying 306,
366.
366?
366.9.
And how many of that is considered in Lot 48, the Pine Barrens core?
You're not conveying that to us.
I know we're not conveying it, but you're including it.
No,
Include-
we're not including that.
It says right here.
No,
you're-
that's included in this number.
The tables are a little bit confusing.
I know, we're trying to make them as simple as possible.
Yeah, we did, we worked a lot on the table.
You have no idea.
All right,
The
in-
creation of tables was a month-long discussion. Laura, I think, when did you send it to me? July 3rd? We've been going back and forth since July 3rd.
Reworked so many times.
We're really trying to make it simple.
Well, you know what, I guess,
This, by the way, this is a consolidated, we had a much bigger plan, and what we've gone over with DC is larger and more, but we just thought it'd be confusing to present to you and into the public, because we tried to make it something less burdensome to go through. But we can give you the more
I
burdensome.
think the column with the total acreage, what the town is retaining, what's
Well, that's
being
what we tried to
conveyed
do
to
here.
Pat, and.
Yeah, we tried to
yeah,
do that
it's
here.
a little confusing, because the tables vary from page to page.
Frank, this 787 that's posted for the Woodland, that was on the supplement, the final supplemental. That was just for the 600 acres to be developed. That was what was studied in our scoping for the final supplemental. We didn't study 1,600.
No, what was studied was the entire site.
Yes.
Okay.
2,300.
So the 787,
And what the final statement identified was the areas, sort of similar to what they've shown you here graphically, the areas that, of the entire 2,000-plus acres that were woodlands, grasslands, and, environmentally sensitive areas, wetlands. And it was never broken out, as to the
developed area that was
Lot
being
6,
studied.
7, and 8, or the 5 lots that the town were reserving, because from the 50-lot subdivision, the DEC's comprehensive habitat plan that they were working with us on was dealing with it as one big parcel.
Yeah.
And their concern wasn't who owned what, but where it was and where it was gonna move to, and what the ultimate acreage would be. That would be preserved for grasslands, woodlands.
On the 2,300 acres.
On the entire site.
So to tell you the truth, I mean, the property that's being acquired by CAT, I would say the majority of the critical habitat that we are acquiring is grasslands. The woodlands are more likely being retained by the town. The woodlands area are the Pine Barrens core and the Navy property, the big Navy property. Those are your primary woodlands.
I thought the Navy property had a, clause that Jen Berman had first right of refusal to buy that property, but I
Yeah.
guess our PDD in saying that no development could occur there, supersedes that?
It would, yes. I mean, he could acquire a piece that has no development, but
Okay. Just wanted clarification on that, Frank, maybe you
I
can.
believe that option expired, but I'll check.
Okay, thank you.
You're talking about on the parcel down on the.
Yeah, on
south-
Navy B.
Yes. Yeah, okay.
Okay.
So again, and Laura can speak to this, but what we identified as the valuable, critical natural resource of the property that we're acquiring is primarily grasslands.
Mhm.
Yes. Well, you've also identified that all of the tiger, salamander buffer areas are now protected, whereas before there was some infringement of that protected buffer, as well as maximizing the grassland for the short-eared owl. So those were the target species on this protection plan.
As the DEC has said, those are the target species for protection? Tiger salamanders and the short-eared owl? So what about the
Typically-
long-eared bat and the butterfly bushes and all the
Okay.
other stuff that they put us through with the,
About the
our
tips,
50-lot
chippy.
subdivision?
I'm not familiar with the butterfly bushes, but as far as northern long-eared bat, we've discussed this in a generic fashion with the DEC. The reduction in non-prime woodlands did not raise an issue,
Okay,
and their intent was to maximize the habitat for short-eared owl. and to protect the tiger salamander habitat.
Okay.
Those are the two listed species of primary interest by the state.
Thank you.
So if you go to the next page, and this is just a little more information referencing locations where we think we can work together with the town. We're going to propose the rail depot to extend, we're proposing to extend the rail spur to get to the rail depot. We're looking to create ecological observation points for local conservation groups.
Terrific.
We're looking to work together with you on the bike path and walking trail. So if you look, we were installing salamander culverts under the runway to connect two wetland habitats to each other, to allow for those juvenile renegade eastern tiger salamanders to travel once they reach that age where they're looking to, create their own and start up their own little little tribes. I know, are they called tribes? Tiger
Populations.
salamander? Populations.
I like the way the development on the western end of the property is moved up closer to 25, because this area down here in the southwest corner is the lowest portion of the property and the closest to groundwater, which is why the water seems to run off there, and that's where the critical habitat for the tiger salamander has been created. So I always thought that it would be problematic to develop in there because of the depth to groundwater versus developing the property on the eastern side more predominantly.
Well, there's a lot of development over here on the eastern side though, right?
Not at the bottom on their proposed map, but on ours there was.
Yeah, so this,
When I was working with the FAA, it was problematic for them because the FAA was interested in building underground tunnels so that in the winter they could go from building to building. And this area and the southwest corner was not conducive to that. So they were interested more in going on the eastern end of the property because it had a greater depth to groundwater.
and the eastern end of the property is, again, Laura can attest to this, but my understanding in conversations with her is that this property is less environmentally sensitive.
Yeah.
I
It
think
is.
you have, I
It's-
think you have a WSR over there, don't you?
Yeah, we have it right here. The
Do.
WSR line is on here, and that's where we're gonna seek some assistance from you to relocate that WSR line a little south of where it's current. That's the only area that we have concern about.
And that solid red line, you're self-imposing a buffer, is that what you're doing?
I believe that's the existing buffer, the nature preserve setback, Laura, on the southern, that's existing, right?
That's ours.
That was done when we took title to the property back in the 90s and established the zoning for the site.
Good.
On the last two pages, we want to show you, this is kind of, it really gives you an idea of what it's going to look like. This is the existing conditions. Now, just to let you know, this area over here, the area inside the 7,000-foot runway that shows a lot of woodlands here, that on the town's map, those were all lots. That's all to be developed
Yep.
under the town's 50-lot subdivision, right here. This
Yep,
whole-
I know.
Okay. So then if you go to the next page, next aerial photo, you'll see that by moving the taxiway to the outside of the runway, you're creating a tremendous grassland habitat inside the 7,000-foot runway. And keep in mind that this is showing a full build-out, which, is gonna take time. What are we committed to, 1 million square feet?
Yeah.
1 million.
Smaller.
Yeah, 1 million square feet is what our commitment is under the agreement. 10 million was what was promised as full build-out. We need to study full build-out, because that's how we determine our impacts. We
So-
don't wanna segment, we don't wanna study something less than full build-out. We also, for environmental assessment, you must identify where all buildings may be located, so that you can do soil testing and other things to determine whether that property is suitable for the proposed development.
So at this full build-out, at this scenario, how many acres is that's to be considered developed?
I don't know if we've calculated the acreage of development,
I don't have access to those numbers.
but you could get that. You'd have to make a determination. You're talking of the building areas, cluster of buildings?
What would be considered development?
Yeah, okay. So there would be more, yeah, well, that would include the rail depot and
taxiways, everything else, that would all be
Well,
developed.
the taxiway, we're not, we're replacing taxiway. We're actually removing taxiway.
But aren't you
On the east- on the west.
relocating it?
Eastern we're removing too. We're removing down here.
But you're still relocating. I would just like development, what's considered development.
Okay. We'll do an affected area, it's what you're asking for.
You're
Correct.
asking for impervious surfaces, right?
Right, anything that, I mean, there's some of it's in the Pine Barrens compatible growth area. I mean, they have a pretty clear definition of development.
Yes. Laura, so what you would do is a net number, okay?
Got it.
All right, so let's go back. So I wanted to walk you through that.
Have you met with any of the fire districts yet?
No.
Because I think that that's important, especially with a goal of 10 million square feet of build-out, as to what
Yeah.
type of fire apparatus or amenities you would have on site, so that you could have
We'll have to
an
look.
immediate response
Yeah, we'll have
to
to look
fire.
because Manorville, it's an interesting site.
I know.
Because this site is made up of 3 different fire districts.
I know.
There's Riverhead, Manorville, and Wading River.
Right.
I'll have to, we'll do a fire district, boundary identification, and we'll have I've done this before, as you know, I did it with
Yes.
the Peconic, Care site. I'll have a joint meeting of all the fire districts that are impacted by the development.
And
Great.
there,
Set that
there
up.
is a carve-out for them for a substation over there.
Okay, Wading River, Manorville, or, Manorville?
Well,
okay.
Well,
that's
there's
something you
there's,
have
we
to-
don't, that's what we're, need to find an issue with depending on how you're building out and when you're building out.
But I'm sure that
Where-
you and the 3 fire districts can figure it out.
Yeah. We'll figure it out
Thank you.
at a meeting, at one of their meetings, if you've been to them before.
Yes.
They're interesting.
Yes.
Chris, not to be a wise guy but I'm gonna say this tongue in cheek. I didn't see anywhere on here a casino
No,
or a mega mall.
no. No
I just-
mega malls,
Because
no
people have
casinos.
said that publicly at that microphone, so people in town think that that might actually happen. So I'm
I'm gonna-
just
Some are excited about that.
concerning that these are some of the things that have been said that should never have been said. There was no fact or basis to them, but once that's spread and put out there, it goes like wildfire through town. So I just wanted to clarify that.
Or cargo airport, or passenger airport. I think you already cleared up the cargo airport, that whatever air traffic would be on this property would be accessory to the manufacturing that's
Correct.
occurring on site.
And that's what's provided under zoning.
That's what I, yes, tried to reiterate, yes.
And I'll
So
go
you-
there a little bit.
so-
I have a
But I
little-
just
yeah.
wanna clarify this, I know
I
that
do.
you asked, it. So, and it's not direction I wanted to go in, but, so you will never put a casino there, there's no intention, there will be no casino at the spot?
There's none planned. I mean, and I can't, I don't know what's gonna happen in the future. I'm gonna be around maybe another 10 or 15 years.
If a
and then-
board 20 years down the road decides that they wanna change the zoning and allow for a casino, then
Casino's
it's.
permitted there now, it's a recreational use and in the PD.
We are not planning on a casino.
Yeah,
Thank
there's
you.
none planned.
Good luck with that, the state's not allowed to go in anyway.
Right, there's none planned. We're working with the state, but the state's goals, I'll talk about in a minute, okay? Of what we've been talking with, for the development site. So, let me go back to my statement, just because I've tried to, so that the habitat protection plan proposed by CAT will protect and preserve more woodland, grassland habitats, and open space than the town's proposed 50-lot subdivision, and it exceeds the thresholds established by the FSGEIS. The proposed habitat plan will relocate taxiways, creating more contiguous protected grassland habitat. There will be no wetlands filled or relocated under the protection plan, or the proposed full build-out detailed on the development plan. Salamander culverts will be installed to connect existing wetlands. Ecological observation points will be established for use by local conservation organizations. The proposed development plan was prepared to represent full build-out under the agreement. The plan was necessary for environmental investigations of the site. The environmental site assessments must study all of the areas being considered for development. The proposed plan is a necessary component for the preparation of the Phase 1 and Phase 2 environmental site assessments. The area proposed for development will have no impact upon Pine Barrens core, and the proposed limited clearing is all within compatible growth area.
So what portion's in the compatible growth area, F?
F, that's it.
And so what's the percentage?
Oh,
that
it's
you-
all, everything
Right,
outside the
so-
core is incompatible growth area.
Right, so what is the percentage of total build-out in the compatible growth area on?
We'll figure that out for you.
Thank you.
But by law, it can't be more than 65%.
Correct. You can't clear more than 65%.
Right.
It'll be something less than that because.
And
you're-
then fertilized dependent vegetation is also restricted to 53%.
Setbacks and buffers.
That's what I think you were referring to, the
Fertilized
veg-
dependent vegetation.
I have to take a look at that.
Yeah, take a look at
Yeah.
that. I'll reiterate, the CAT will only seek to use the runways as permitted under existing zoning as accessory to the proposed research and development, manufacturing, and educational uses proposed at the EPCAL campus. The runways are a key feature that make the campus attractive for aerospace, aviation, and related technology industries. So let's talk about what you're probably really interested in. Tenants and job creation. The list of prospective tenants and the people that we've been negotiating with are all of the companies that were presented during the qualified and eligible hearings. It includes aviation and aerospace ventures, composite material and manufacturing companies, research and development, telecommunications and technology companies, prototype manufacturers, aviation maintenance and repair facilities, next-generation transportation concept companies, advanced energy initiatives, educational institutions, and transportation companies. All interested, conversations have been had, including governmental entities that are looking to relocate.
Yay, goosebumps.
Many of the interested companies and parties that are interested in being part of the reuse and revitalization of EPCAL have visited the site and made commitments to locate at EPCAL if CAT is able to close upon the purchase of the property.
So you can't tell us who's made
We
commitments?
can't because, I'll get into that in a minute. Specifics on negotiations are still preliminary and confidential because CAT has not closed on the property. There's still too much uncertainty to reach concrete terms or discuss specifics on facilities, since facilities that will be built will all be built to suit for the needs of the company locating at EPCAL. CAT also wants to protect discussions with prospective tenants from being damaged by current negative stories being published about Illuminati, Preston, and 555. And the statements being made that the success of EPCAL development rests upon Illuminati's involvement in the project, because it does not. We want him to be involved, but the success does not rest upon him. Attracting companies that CAT is pursuing for EPCAL is a very competitive business. CAT is working to attract many companies who are also being sought after to locate at other sites in other states, who are making strong efforts to lure these companies to their industrial parks with promised benefits and incentives. That happens all over the country. And I've been party to many negotiations when I was with the county, where we were trying to keep a company in Suffolk County, and they left. They went to Pennsylvania, and I'm not gonna name them, you
Yeah.
probably know who they are. They went to Carolinas, they went to Texas, the biggest company went to Florida, and you all know who that is. So,
Yep.
we have to be competitive. If we're not competitive, these companies can relocate.
And I'm pleased that there's room for expansion for the companies that are in the existing core right now, that are busting out the seams and have nowhere to go, that are looking to go to Pennsylvania or Florida or Virginia, and they're constantly communicating with those core businesses that currently operate there, that have 1,500 jobs, to try and get them out of New York State, because of the taxes, the sewer rent, the water rent. So, I understand what you're saying as far as being competitive and not wanting any of your contractual negotiations to be stifled by somebody else luring them to another state. But at the same time, I'm curious as to whether or not there's going to be any sort of incentive for businesses to stay here in New York, and any connection to the existing core for renewable energies and for the reduction of the sewer rates and the water rates.
Okay, so you're reading my script? So
No.
what we have to offer at EPCAL is the connection to Long Island. Long Island Science, Long Island's technology, Long Island's educational facilities. Long Island's technical know-how meets the tremendous, it's the meeting of Long Island's technical know-how and the tremendous assets at EPCAL. That's what we have to offer. CAT will diligently work to leverage these assets for maximum gain. Monetize Long Island's strong mix of science, technology, and manufacturing by partnering with local educational institutions that are developing the science and technology in both classroom and incubators to meet the next challenge and create the manufacturing opportunities that will bring that developed technology to the marketplace. There is a void, there's a disconnect between the developed science and technology and the commercialization of that science and technology. The science and technology is being developed on Long Island, and EPCAL can be the place that connects the developed science with the opportunity to manufacture the product. CAT can offer that connection, and EPCAL can be that place.
Chris, is the Brookhaven property, the old Dowling College property, still part of the plan with this?
It is,
Yes.
it is.
And there was always talk about an education component, working with local universities and such. Has there been progress on that, or is that still included?
Yes, let's talk about something that's happening very recently. As you might have read last week, there was a huge announcement that the governor made, or maybe it was 2 weeks ago now, I start to lose track of time, I'm so busy. That he's committed to, the governor has made a commitment to reach now 70% of our statewide electricity from renewable sources. And as part of that commitment, they're making a huge effort to develop offshore wind. 1,700 megawatts. Now, just to give you some perspective, that 100-acre S-Power solar project that I was involved with was 20 megawatts, 20. So this effort is for 1,700 megawatts offshore Long Island. That's a tremendous opportunity. That announcement for the offshore wind generation just off of Long Island creates an opportunity for EPCAL. CAT is working with local colleges and universities to establish a wind power consortium. The discussions are very far along, and there's very high-level people involved in those discussions. And they're looking to train workforce and attract technological advancements and the required manufacturing to serve the wind power industry. And that's going to take place both. This is how big it's going to be. A lot of work will happen at Dowling, more in the administrative office type of approach, with the manufacturing and the development at EPCAL. And that would be the connection. That's one of the connections.
Where is the talk of putting these wind power facilities?
Well, that's
Um,
controversial. Maybe Long
Oh,
Beach.
no, the facilities are offshore. They're all planned
I know
out in
that.
the ocean. 30 miles off of Montauk is the Orsted proposal. There's also Equinor is proposing something further west that is going to connect in the Jones Beach area. So there are 2 proposals out there. Those are dependent upon federal ocean bottom leases for areas offshore where they can locate wind.
Nobody is contracted for the development of those yet, where they're being manufactured.
No. Right now, all the manufacturing occurs in Europe, and they put these on boats, so the expense is tremendous.
So it's not, they will not be manufactured here.
We're hoping.
We're hoping. There could be components. The turbines themselves, probably not, just to let you know. We would never, nobody on Long Island, I mean, some people on Long Island would love it, but most people the majority of Long Islanders would
So
not
what-
put up with 255-foot-long windmill blades being manufactured on Long Island and transported to a deep water port to be barged out to 30 miles offshore.
So what do you see being manufactured on Long Island?
A lot of other components. Remember, all these wind turbines have hubs, they have engines, they have motors, they have bases, they have all the connections. I'm not an engineer, please, but I'm familiar with some of the agreements that are put in place for those types of manufacturing.
Well, right now, Stony Brook Manufacturing at the EPCAL property in the industrial core where Grumman existed is manufacturing light poles and certain components of light posts for US roadways, I-95, I-10, I-20, all throughout the United States. And that's being manufactured right now on the property, the light poles
But nothing to do with wind.
and the components. Nothing to do with wind, but there's nothing to say that it can't be. Even the components that go within the turbine that could be manufactured here on the island rather than overseas.
Okay.
Another opportunity is in transportation sector.
I was gonna ask you about that.
So this has led to lengthy negotiations and close possibility for agreement. Transportation makes up, again, and this is hard because we don't have a site yet. So just remember, we're
Understood.
negotiating
I get it.
on what we would talk about as lawyers is that it's speculative, okay? We're negotiating on property that we don't own yet.
Mhm.
And there's word on the street that we may never own it. So just remember, that kind of conversation leads tenants and people we're trying to bring to the site to question whether it's a smart move. Okay? But the opportunity in transportation, the recent statement is that transportation makes up 1/3 of New York State's emissions. 1/3 of the emissions come from transportation. So the newly formed Climate Council, New York State Climate Council, will likely call for an expansion of mass transit and an accelerated shift to electric vehicles, which New York State now promotes using rebates and investment credits and things of that type that you were asking about before. So there's encouraging news because we have a company that we're negotiating with, which is a large transportation company, which is pursuing a conversion of a substantial portion of its fleet to electrical vehicles. And that will create an opportunity for a company who's positioned to host that type of manufacturing. And that we hope to be that company. That negotiation is ongoing.
And discussions have been going on for years about maglev. in
Maglev
public
has actually been
transportation.
expressed interest in coming to Calverton, and we are talking to them. But this is not Maglev, what I'm talking about.
No, I know, you're talking about individual vehicles, but
Right.
to convert our system, our transportation system in New York
electric-based,
State to maglev would
Yeah,
be
magnetic.
phenomenal.
Magnetic
Maglev
elevation.
presented at the qualified and eligible.
Right.
I believe that they had no funding at all
Not
for the
yet.
project in the United States.
But
that they've
again,
been
this
working on
recent
for
announcement.
I'm just,
Yeah.
I'm just talking in the here and now,
Right.
right? Because we know in the intended development plan, development is supposed to start within 18 to 24 months on the project.
Right.
And I'm just saying, just to be realistic with maglev, that they, it's a great technology, but the stage that they're in and the funding they have is not 18 months away.
Right.
Oh, no, definitely not. I mean, maglev may happen 10 or 20 years from now, because it's not only a very significant R&D program, it's also very expensive.
Right. So,
But that was not the company we were talking about.
that's not the company we're talking about. And I agree with you. This project is gonna be built out over the next 10 to 20 years. Okay? So there's a here and now, which is 18 to 24 month cycle.
And I think that's kind of what
There's a
we'd like
5-year
information on.
Right, there's a 5-year cycle, there's a 10-year cycle, so you have to, and it's gonna come in. The property's gonna be developed, hopefully in my lifetime.
Well, and the intended development plan it is
As
in
I
your
face-
lifetime,
as I
because
face
it's a
my own
1,000,000 square
mortality.
feet in 5 years, so it is in your lifetime. So that's kind of what we're looking to hear from you.
1 million square feet is what's on the property right now in the former Grumman facility
The
buildings.
industrial core is 1 million square feet.
Yeah.
And our commitment is to do, our obligation under the contract is to do another 1 million square feet
Yeah.
on our acquired property.
Yeah.
5 years? In 5 years, so that's the first 5 years.
So you're not gonna build 10 million right away?
I was thinking about just dropping them in, the buildings, 10 million square feet of buildings. No, it's
Well,
not
there's a
gonna be-
lot more that goes with that.
Yeah.
Did you have more that you wanted to go over? I have
Well, I
some
just wanna
questions.
say that, we believe the bottom line is the CAT will bring new, high-paying jobs in aviation, aerospace, advanced energy, transportation, technology, science to the east end of Long Island. It will transform this site, the town of Riverhead, to Silicon Valley East. And I'm excited by it. I've been involved with this property for now 23 years. And I'd like I said, in my lifetime, I'd like to see something happen here that, I think what happened in the core was a success.
Yes.
If you go back and look and why it happened, why it was done that way, we acquired the property. The first thing we acquired was a whole lot of buildings and infrastructure that we couldn't afford to maintain. The price in the first year was $3 million, our first year of ownership. We were
But the
left
bu-
with the task, I was sitting right where you're
The
sitting,
building,
and the
the
task was to
buildings
sell
were,
it.
the buildings were there.
Right.
And so people came into the buildings. I'm assuming that you're not building, which I believe you said in there, you're not building buildings on spec, that you're building to suit. Am I correct on that? This million
Yes.
square feet in 5 years is not gonna be built on spec.
No.
So that being said, I'm still waiting to hear how you're moving forward with the aviation and technology.
And that'll come.
Well, you know, you qualified and eligible, you, 555 was the development portion of it. You know, what you presented in the qualified and eligible from 555 was what you were bringing to it, was the development aspect of the property. And that Luminati was bringing the cachet to bring aviation and technology. And, you know, I'm not making this leap that Daniel Preston is that person anymore. You know, we know that he's defaulted with Hexcel, which, you know, really puts a black mark on his reputation in the aviation and high-tech industry. So where are you filling that void, with who and how, and who is that?
Okay, we're not prepared to tell you all of that right now, but the agreements are ongoing.
But you did tell.
Actually, let me just say,
Yeah.
there will be partnership agreements, in addition to tenancy agreements, there will be partnership agreements with several companies that are being negotiated right now.
So I'm gonna go back to the qualified and eligible. You brought forward Steve Rogers, right? And Steve Rogers, you had him come up as the leadership role in developing aviation and technology. Where is he in his planning for this site? What is going on with him?
I don't know what's going on with Steve Rogers.
Do you, I mean, do you want us to bring him in?
Is
Well,
he
I'd
still
like to
part of the
know,
project?
is he
Yes.
still working with you guys?
I'm sure he's still working.
He's
with-
still, yeah, he's definitely still a
working
resource
with
for
the-
us,
yeah.
absolutely.
So,
He's still
but
working
when
with
he
the
came-
marketing and the leasing group, yes, I'm sure.
But in
he is.
qualified and eligible, he wasn't a resource. He came in, he said he had a leadership role and that he was moving to help advance the aviation and technology forward. So can you tell us what he has done to this point from the qualified and eligible to move that forward?
I'd like to do that at a follow-up meeting maybe with you. We'll bring in some of the involved parties to go to the next step, which would be kind of marketing and strategic tenancy
Well,
development.
this is my point, and I think this is the concern that I've expressed, and, you know, I think you guys have the development portion of that down. I think 555 is very good at developing the physical property.
Yes.
But this isn't about just developing the physical property, because we know you're not building on spec. We know that you're building to suit. So who are you building to suit? Because your main person, Luminati, is no longer there with credibility.
Right.
Your other person, Steve Rogers, who you brought to us as being able to move this project forward, I'm a little, you know, what's going on with that? And who are your team to be able to develop these?
We'll
So
br-
are we going through the Q and E again?
No, we're not going through the
Or-
Q&E.
No, but just to piggyback on what Laura's saying, I mean, you said on numerous occasions that it isn't good for misinformation to get out or for tenants to see that people are questioning things. So we hear that, but at the same time, and we have the huge responsibility of protecting the town. And quite frankly, we feel like we've really been in the dark. I mean, we're glad to have you here today, but we really have been in the dark, and that's not good for the town.
Okay.
I think it's kind of been asked and answered. You've described what you can give us in terms of information without the specifics. A, you don't own the property, so it's difficult to actually get something formally done with a tenant or a prospective tenant until you do take ownership of the property. And I think that's just common sense, that, you know,
But
that's
I
how it
think there are
works, that's
some
how the business
things-
works. There are people that you're in conversations with that you're not willing to disclose. And I'm gonna take you at your word for that, because I've heard the same thing, and I understand that that is going on from other sources. So I'm willing to take you at your word for that.
So can I ask a question, because I think it's important that we work together? And part of the information you can provide us is critical to us providing you some additional information on agreements we can reach with some of these
Well,
prospective
I mean,
tenants. Let me
yeah,
ask the
yeah.
question. The question is, when will the town be ready to transfer the lots to us? That timeline is important for us to make promises to tenants, potential tenants. So the
And
way
I-
this works, when you're, so just think of how this works. As a lawyer, I can tell you this is the way I've done it on other projects. We haven't acquired the land yet. We don't have a date when we're gonna acquire the land. We don't know when the town's gonna have the lots created to transfer to us. We're then asking.
Well, you do have a year date, it's in the contract, so you do
Understood.
you do have a date when it would be transferred.
that's
You
what
have a
I-
definitive date on that because it's written into the contract.
And that's what I've been putting out there.
Yes.
I've actually been giving you a little bit of the benefit of the doubt. I'm saying March when our year is really May, but I explained that to them. The town's obligation is May, May 15th, I think it is the exact date. Perhaps March we'll close. Now, then it's gonna be us bringing in site plan applications, which we can do as a contract ND.
And you have a 90-day approval process on that.
So then we start construction. So the way leases work, you enter into a lease, you have an effective date of a lease, and then you have a commencement date of a lease. We don't even have an effective date yet of a lease.
Right, and if
So
you,
then you're starting to, then from that, you negotiate with the tenants for a commencement date of the lease, which would be the date they occupy the property. And then you actually sometimes give them rent abatements in the first few months of the leases, so that they can get into the space and
So you're
occupy it. So we're working from, even if we go with your best May 15th or even earlier March, we're looking, really minimum 2 years to negotiate a lease and say, the possible commencement date would be, June 1st of 2021.
which is not that far off.
It's not that far off, but you gotta give us, we need a little more information.
But we need a little bit more information also, because I didn't ask you for a lease. I asked, who is your team that's
No,
doing
no,
your
no.
aviation and technology?
And we're gonna provide that.
To bring that to the town, and that's my point on that, because I see you have your plans for developing the property, but I'm not seeing where your resources are and who you have that's developing the tenants to come in, and the Silicon Valley, we know that doesn't develop on its own. We're asking for, we know that if you're saying shovel in the ground, starting in 18 months after you acquire the property, a more definitive timeline of how that would proceed to get to, the million square feet.
Okay.
So we,
Go ahead.
sorry. We hear your request.
Mhm.
I think what we came to present to you is where we are now, right? This is the phase of development of the property that is really relevant right now, and that's why we walked you through this. It's also the plans that have been out in the public, and we wanted to answer these questions. We hear you, we'll come back and we'll present that, okay?
And also would like to know about the runway, because also at the qualified and eligible, you said you needed to do we had asked you about the runway, the cost of the runway. You said you needed to get out on site to do your due diligence there, to figure out what it was and the cost of doing the runway. So we'd like to have that come
Okay.
back also.
All right, we'll give you some numbers on that.
but I'm happy to hear that all the people from the qualified and eligible and the letter of intents that were submitted, that those people are still committed to come. And I thank them for their patience in going through this process, because it's not an easy process.
No.
And even as a contract vendee, you coming in with a site plan is not gonna give you the 90-day approval process.
No.
Because the 90-day approval process is after all the agencies have signed off on the approved subdivision map, and then you can go in for your 90-day approval, not
Right.
during the subdivision process.
That's correct.
Well, the subdivision will have been done, but we have to have the subdivision done to hand the property over.
Well, the
That's part of it.
subdivision can't be done until the DEC signs off on it, and Suffolk County Department of Health Services signs off on the infrastructure for the sewer, the water,
And
the
we are moving
utilities,
that.
drainage.
And you file the map, which is.
and you file the map.
But they don't take possession of the property. That's our obligation prior to closing, is to complete the subdivision.
Understood, but they
And that
can't
would be
come
the
in,
map with the sewer and everything else.
they can't come in with a site plan and get 90-day approval until that subdivision map has been filed with the county clerk.
And my point is that we don't go to closing until the subdivision is filed. So once we close, the subdivision is already filed.
Right, and then
That's our
hopefully,
obligation.
and then hopefully these people that came in with the letter of intents and the qualified and eligible we'll wait until May of 2020 to say, okay, yes, we're still interested, and let's negotiate and sign the leases, and let's get in there and start building our buildings, after you spend the $40 to $60 million in sewer and water and utilities and drainage in order to put a shovel in the ground.
Right.
So, to that end, QTA, that was a last-minute one that you had filed for the letter of intent. They're located in Mexico. They have the 22 stations and hangars. Can you update me where, if that is still,
We'd like to do it, I'm sorry, because I have to be out here at 10 o'clock, I'm sorry, I have another commitment after this, and I apologize.
So can
do
I
let that know.
an
But
update on all-
Can we schedule a follow-up meeting
Yes.
where we can bring in, I'm really, again, and I feel a little bit at a loss, and I don't want to grope around with it, because I'm really not the marketing leasing attorney. My job is the land, I'm a land attorney, I'm a development entitlement approvals attorney. But do want to come back in with another team, and I'm sure Amy will be here. This was our ecology, this is what we've done so far. Our due diligence so far really has been environmental, and determining whether you can actually locate the promised square footage on the site, which we think you can. Now remember, you referred to this as a development plan. This is not a development plan. This is this is locating buildings strictly for due diligence purposes to determine if you can locate 10 million square feet on the property, and you can do it both physically and environmentally. That's what this map is.
I
This is not-
understand that.
This is not a development plan, this is not a formal submission, this is not something that this is what we're building.
Yeah, we knew that.
Okay, I just wanna make sure.
No, I understand.
So I just don't wanna mischaracterize what we're presenting to you today.
Well, we do have a lot of questions, so let's figure out a time when you guys can come in again. I mean, definitely
Yeah.
as a starting point to have everyone here at the table, but just before we do that, one other question, Laura. Who will be managing the habitats? That will be through you, or who will be managing the habitats?
That would have to be decided, you mean as far as entering into an agreement for preservation management? Yeah, there'll be,
Habitat protection plan.
yeah, no, we will definitely have a company, I don't think are we gonna do our own management of that? I think this is a question I had asked a couple of months ago. We'll probably have either a not-for-profit or some type of a company managing it. I think the intent would probably be to turn it over to some
As a
type-
conservation easement?
Yes,
Yeah, but we have not finalized that
we have
decision
not
yet.
finalized that decision yet. But that was brought up as a topic for discussion a couple of months ago, as to management of the.
So maybe you can come back with some of that information.
Well, that will be in accordance with the DEC approval as to
Absolutely.
how
Right.
often the
That would be-
grass
that
has
would
to
be a
get mowed,
condition. That would be
and when it can
conditions.
get mowed, when they're
Yeah,
not.
yeah, we're
in
not
the
gonna
import.
have an answer for that the next time we meet.
But the
that's fine.
question would be whether we're gonna self-manage, I
Yeah.
mean, somebody on CAT will manage it, or whether they would enter into an agreement to have a manager like Nature. I'm not saying they're doing it, this is not a statement, but the company such as the Nature Conservancy or something to that effect,
Sure.
who manages the property. As we do at the county level, we have Peconic Land Trust, the Nature,
Mhm.
there are a lot of companies out here,
Right.
organizations out here that do that.
They would love to undertake.
So the
projects like
previous
this.
LOIs are still in place?
Yes.
Okay, good. And, well, we do have questions, we'll come back, then let's plan a time when you can come back in.
Yeah, and it could be,
Can we work
it
on
would be more of a business meeting, is what you're looking for, not a
Right.
property
Well,
meeting.
we want-
I will say, again, there is gonna be a hesitancy to talk about specific deal
I don't-
terms and
yeah, I-
negotiations.
But will you?
I mean, we have the same issue at our other properties. We don't come out with announcements about final deals until they're ready, the tenant's ready. You know, there's more than just us at this table to comment on
Right,
it.
you don't need
But
that.
you, as I said, Luminati is, you've identified Luminati as your person to attract people for aviation and technology to this property.
That was
And
one of the company,
That,
yes.
in your statement, you said that they would be used at the qualified and eligible. You had many people testify that Luminati would be the people attracting there. Are you still standing by that Luminati is your person that's attracting aviation and technology? Or you also had some other people where you had Steve Rogers and other people with expertise for developing these kind of, from the
So
ground up,
That's
and we
the
want to know who they
presentation,
are?
that's the presentation you want us to come and bring next.
Well, and the
Understood.
runway, there was the required $1 million investment in the runway, and
Yep,
we'd like to
that's
know
still
the
there.
steps that,
That's-
if there's a plan, or the steps that you're ready to take to work on the runway. A timeline, we all need to talk about a timeline.
Yeah, which you guys definitely need to be a partner in.
Yeah.
And then also, the other thing is schools, education. You know, this was also one of the other issues that was brought up. I think you had Tandem School of Engineering, Polytech School of Engineering, Stony Brook, Brookhaven, Cornell, MIT, the University of Washington. You know, where are these? I know that these don't have to be based on maybe having actual physical square footage. They don't, you know, to have their connection with them. Where are you with all of that?
Okay. We have some, we do have ongoing conversations with educational institutions, I can tell you that. But we'll set up a business meeting, and I wanna give you kind of a projected I would say maybe in September. I don't mean to be pushing that off, but we're already in August, and I know what happens in August. People disappear the second half of August.
Not us, we're
So,
old.
no, not me either, I'm gonna be here. I got baseball tournaments to play, so I gotta. So maybe sometime in September, I know it slows down a little bit, we can maybe schedule something in September. And we can do it at a, again, and I don't know, Frank, we can talk about this, whether that type of level of discussion with the board could maybe be an executive session, because there are going to be, we're going to be conveying negotiations. Maybe we can split it, maybe we can do partly an open session and partly an executive, we could talk about that,
Yeah, we'll cross that bridge.
okay?
Yeah, I understand you have to be.
I mean, I
It's
would
a
love to,
tightrope. It's a
I don't wanna
tightrope.
be, I have always said it's like a policy of mine, don't negotiate transactions in public.
No, you can't. You
But
can't.
this might be something where I
Yes.
think we could discuss some
Be
of the
cook's
business
spoiled broth.
terms, the runway and those things, but some of the negotiations I think are a little bit sensitive for public forum.
And Dave, is there anything that we missed, you think, that we didn't ask that we maybe should bring up?
No, I think, for the next meeting, I think we'll cover those things. I think they've addressed it and not really prepared to address a lot of the concerns of the board at this point. But I think you understand what the board is looking for.
I do, I understand completely.
And we're not interested in trampling any confidentiality that you have with your prospective tenants, but we need to know more specifically, you know, who's going there and when it's going there.
We're gonna have to get releases from those companies. There's some companies have already told us, I think we have like 2 companies that said we could mention them, but I'm not gonna mention them today, I don't think it would be fair.
We'll respect the confidentiality, but we need a little more specific
Yeah.
information. I know we're 9 months off, but, you know, at some point, we gotta have a little more specifics.
Right,
And then also,
9 months from closing, potentially,
Yeah.
10 months.
yeah.
And then also, we had received several letters from Goldman Sachs and from other financial sources that said that they were committed to the project and the development of the site and the acquisition. So it would be helpful to have those updated letters that the funding is still there, because I know that there's been some concern in the community that there's a lot of other acquisitions that are happening throughout United States and that you might be overextended, so we would like to see those updated letters as well.
Okay, I'll have to check my balance, my bank
It's a
account.
different group, again,
Yeah.
but understood.
That's not me, but,
Thank you.
All right, everybody, thank you
Thank
very
you all.
much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Very much.
Nice to meet everybody.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Your Ms. Kent?
Yes.
Hi, Phil Butler. Pleasure to meet you.
Thank you.
Chris,
Yeah,
sorry.
you're welcome.
Yeah, started about a year ago.
It's been.
Nice to meet you.
We're gonna you guys stay here.
I know, yeah.
I like the little
Oh,
Thank you.
if I have to wear a suit, I might as well.
So you'll give me
Go-
those
go
collateral,
full out.
right, percentage?
Yeah. I don't wear it by choice.
Okay.
Okay,
thank you.
Thank you.
Supervisor Phil Butler.
Thank you.
Pleasure to meet
Thank
you.
Got my full support, everything you want.
Thanks for getting the
Okay.
plan.
Cool. John over there in
You,
the white shirt
the
will
guy
have my
talking so
card.
much, oh, you guys.
Thanks for getting the
He's got the white shirt and the tie on there.
Take it out. No, don't take it out.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to look at that real quick.
My question is, can't the short ear owl pick up these things and drop one of your culverts for them? Can't the owls just pick them up with their feet and throw them into the pond across the way?
Larry, if you can hear me, I guess we're taking a 5-minute break.
If we're paying it, then go home.
Yeah, I think what he's proposed makes sense. And obviously, you can't tell you how to negotiate with this guy, that guy, the other guy, but confidentiality, you know, in the session, they can tell us more than they can here. They can't feed it right into the press. Let's scare people off more.
But it's also.
Yeah,